and then V flies off to go kill Doll's parents. That's how it's supposed to go. How's it going, YouTube lovers? This is the Boulder Animator. Welcome back to another video where today I'm doing another episode of Eabs Book Club. Yes, I know it's not the bendy one that I promised when I started this whole series, nor even promised last time that the next one would be bendy, but that is coming later this month. I promise I'm doing it later this month. It's on the schedule. I'm forcing myself to lock in and get that script done. The bendy review is coming out later this month for Eabs Book Club, I swear. But this is a really special one I just had to talk about because the first Murder Drones graphic novel issue is out. Written by Wyatt Kennedy and illustrated by Mi-Gyeong. And I supported this Kickstarter myself, actually. Like the morning it went live, specifically the Tier 10 Absolute Solver set. I wasn't planning on getting the Tier 11 because I thought it was out of my price range personally. But even if I wanted to, that one was sold out by the time that I locked in my tier. So I did support this graphic novel. There are rewards on the way that'll in theory be coming like in November. I'm thinking of maybe doing an Eabs unboxing video for that one. The whole unboxing for that I think might be a lot of fun because there's going to be like a cool 98.7 hat and a jacket and all kinds of physical rewards of the comics and art and stuff like that. So I'm definitely going to be checking that out, thinking an unboxing video would be fun. But for now, issue number 1 of this series is now out in stores. I think it's sold out immediately or something like that. But as someone who backed it, I have a digital copy already, and I read through it, and I want to talk about this. I know that the fandom is talking about this in many ways, so I figured that it'd be fun to do kind of a review of it by splitting this review, since it's an adaptation of something that I've already reacted to on the channel, splitting this review into 3 sections. First being how it follows the same plot from the show, the second being the stuff I didn't really like in their changes, and wrapping it all up with the stuff that I actually liked. So I really want to talk about this, so let's get into this. I will, of course, put a spoiler warning and an opinion warning. Yes, I'm going to be talking about the plot of this show and the graphic novel, and I will be giving my opinions on what I think about the adaptation here. So with that out of the way, let's jump into this. First, let's go over how the graphic novel is very similar to the pilot, because that's basically what this is adapting, is the first of Murder Drone's 8 episodes. Right off the bat, I have to say, right as we get into Uzi's opening monologue, loading exposition and all that, the art style is gorgeous. It is honestly so much fun to see the Murder Drone's characters in a 2D art style, since that is Liam's bread and butter usually. Like Murder Drone's like the only 3D animated thing that he's done. All the other stuff that I've reacted to from him with Cliffside and Internation Cube, those have been, and also Let's Split Up as well. Those have all been 2D animated, and that is his style that he works in. So it was really cool to see these characters from a 3D show kind of like almost reverse engineered back into a Liam Vickers kind of style there. I think it does a really good job. And again, like I said, it opens up with Uzi's monologue. We are worker drones, all of that. And besides a funny little typo in the scene where she's interacting with Thad, it largely is following the same plot. Like the railgun explodes in the classroom. She goes off to find the final parts to build it, and when she's out there, she meets her future boyfriend N, and it's the only way that these two future lovers would meet each other. He stabs her in the hand with acid, and she shoots his head off. I mean, what else would you expect from them? And after they have their brief interaction in the pod, where Uzi starts to basically like plant the seed of N's doubt about his purpose as a disassembly drone, the rest of his squad, of course, Jay and my favorite character V, show up, and Uzi has to run back to the bunker. But when she gets there, N is killing the worker drones that were there, and he's threatening to kill her. And she begs for her dad to use the gun and help her, and he instead leaves her there. So then N's teammates arrive, all that, playing out very similar. very similar to the pilot. And his teammates arrive. He gets the virus, and they go off to kill everything. Everything's going bad because the bunker's in danger. And if it seems like I'm going through this kind of quickly, honestly, that's how the graphic novel is. The graphic novel, I will say, is incredibly fast-paced, which I think is unfortunate because I think that the pilot episode of Murder Drones is one of the best-paced episodes of the show. It is a show that has pacing issues. I think that is most evident in the finale itself. That is an episode that is absolutely far too fast-paced for what it has in it. I like the content of the finale just fine, but I think that it needed more room to breathe in the slower moments before we get to the anime-style action. And the graphic novel kind of introduces that issue to the pilot. There's just so much they're trying to cram into the pages that they have for this novel, and it does feel fast-paced. So I'll talk a little bit about that more at the end of my full review of it. But anyway, like I said, it largely follows the plot of just the pilot episode. It only adapts the stuff from the pilot episode. So Uzi saves N from a virus that J planted on him, and the two of them go off to face off against J and V, and Uzi ends up using the railgun on J, and the workers are happy about it, but because of her dad's betrayal, Uzi banishes herself and goes off with N to the landing pod in the Spire, where she declares that her plan is to murder all humans, classic robot stuff. Like I said, it's largely the same as the pilot because that is the only thing it's adapting. I am curious how that might change in future issues. Like I said, I'll talk about that a little bit more in terms of like pacing and things like that during the outro of this video. But overall, yeah, it is the same story as the pilot, and it is really cool to see this really fun art style that, like I said, feels like it goes back to Liam's style of drawing, adapting the show that we know and love, and the pilot, which is a very, very strong episode all by itself, being brought into this, comic form. It's really fun. Like I said, it is mostly the same, but of course the more interesting parts to talk about here are going to be the differences. So there are a few differences. There's some smaller ones in there, but I want to talk about the more major differences that it makes and what I think about them. Okay, so in talking about these differences, let's get out of the way. Let's start with the ones that I'm not the biggest fan of. There's two main changes that I feel are detrimental, honestly, to the story, at least like where the story is going to be going, and the characters involved. The first of which is the scene where Khan leaves Uzi behind. Now, in the show, we see a bit more of his face, and you can kind of see it's implied that it's partially him kind of having trauma, almost like a PTSD, thinking to back when his wife Nori was killed by a disassembly drone, and like that is a good thing to show there. And I will say that as harsh as I was on Khan when I first watched the pilot myself, him closing he should have used the railgun and trusted his daughter. That doesn't change, but him closing the door on her wasn't a horrible decision in the moment because he was still a high-ranking member of the worker defense force. He had a job to do. Yes, that was his daughter, but there was an entire bunker of drones that he was still supposed to defend. So closing the door, even though it's ended up not working, was not actually the worst idea practically here. In the comic, however, it kind of glosses over both of these or just straight up ignores it. They gloss over the first one and straight up ignores the second one. And it's just a couple of panels that show Khan deciding to leave Uzi, and it doesn't go at all into what he's thinking in that moment and how he kind of sees his wife in what's happening to his daughter. And granted, like I said, the comic is fast-paced, so that might have been a reason why that ended up being skipped, is because, it's for pacing reasons, it's already super fast-paced, there's a lot of dialogue here, we're just going to skip over that. But then there's the problem with the door. Because, like I said, in the show, he closes the door, and it shows that he is trying to still defend the colony. He doesn't do that in the comic. He just turns tail and runs, which I feel like kind of destroys the scene in a way, because you could, again, like I said, I was frustrated with Khan when I saw this. I know a lot of reactors I've watched after I watched the show myself that despised Khan in that moment. But it is still an important moment to show that he has responsibilities. He is a leader in that bunker. And it just makes him a full-on coward. Like, not that he isn't a coward, but it just makes that his entire personality when he's supposed to be the leader of their defense force. Like, yes, the WDF is pretty useless in the show as well, but there was always something different with the way Khan was presented and the way that he held himself. So that just, I feel like it kind of glosses over the scene and makes it a very superficial version of what we got in the show, which it's not too big a deal, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, since Khan doesn't have too much of an impact on the story going forward. Just like a little bit in the early episodes. Then by the second half, we've just completely ignored him. But it does feel like it tosses out a major part of what makes Khan Khan. But I will say he's not the only character I'm concerned about, because I said there were two major changes that I wasn't happy with. One of these being Khan's scene, and the other one, which I think is even more dramatic and has me even more concerned, because it involves my favorite character, Serial Designation V. Yep. Specifically, two things with her. The first one is in the scene where N is given the virus by J. Because in the show, by that point, V had already, scurried off through the vents to go find, Doll's parents to kill or something like that. She had already left. In the comic, she is standing right there when V attaches the virus to kill N. And yes, I know that at this point in the story, we don't know much about V. We don't know about her motivation and the fact that she's, basically working for Sin with the hope that there will be a better future for her and N and J afterwards, even though that clearly wasn't going to happen because the Solver is crazy. But right here, V wouldn't be comfortable with that happening to N, I don't think. Literally, Jay is euthanizing him in front of her. And it just comes across as weird that V is still there, because she doesn't do much in this scene in the comic. In fact, she just does the lowest body count needs a missile part at the end that she says in the show and just flies off anyway. I feel like this scene could have easily been fixed by having that happen before everything. It could have done just like in the show. They show up, N stammers like an idiot with V around, and then V flies off to go kill Doll's parents. That's how it's supposed to go. They swapped the order of events in the comic in a way that it feels like it doesn't really align with what we know later of V's story and her character arc. So that part, I don't really like that part. And it gives me concern, especially because on the Kickstarter's page, there were a few character bios talking about, the disassembly drones and Uzi, 4 major characters in this story. The one for V, I'll put it on screen here. It doesn't feel like it really gets the character. She is the reason she's my favorite character in this show is because she's the most complex. She goes through the biggest character arc. I love her character so much because of that. I did not care for her in the first 2 episodes of the show, but by episode 6, I was furious with the idea that they might have killed her off. So, all they had to do was keep the same order of events as the show, and they would have avoided that problem there. But with that, the character bio, and then my other issue, or at least not even issue, but a little bit of a red flag for V's character in this graphic novel is at the very end, in the show, Uzi and N tie up V, and they take her back and chain her to the chair in the landing pod. She's supposed to be there because of scenes that she has with N later as he starts to piece together his past, and she starts to feel extra guilty about keeping him in the dark for so long. she's nowhere to be seen at the end of this novel. She still gets, kicked into the ground by En during the fight. That still happens. But then she's just gone. You don't see V at all after that frame. And Uzi and En just walk out by themselves. No, flying through the ceiling or anything. They're just gone. And there's no indication that they took V with them. Not even when they were walking off, you could have shown En dragging her behind him as they left. So it feels weird. The biggest changes to this comic, it feels like, are ignoring character details and stuff that needs to be there for character moments later. Now I don't want to be a doom and gloomer, so I'm not going to jump straight onto the whole, Wyatt doesn't understand the characters that he's writing and it's just going to be a disaster. I'm not going to jump onto that right away, but I will say it's not a promising start for that, especially for V, who's basically the third major character of the entire show. She was the marketing at the beginning. She's on the thumbnail for the pilot. She's part of that trio. It's what I loved so much about the music video that they did for Fight Till I'm Good Enough, is it showed all three of them, Uzi, En, and V, fighting together and doing stuff together. That is the trio. That is the core of the show right there. And that's why I love them fighting together in the finale as well. The fact that V got so sidelined here is concerning. I know that she isn't, quite the third main character yet at this point in the story. That doesn't really happen until the prom fight and then, everything going on with the camp. I get that. So it's not horrible that she gets a little glossed over in the first issue here, which is just the pilot. But like I said, I'm a little concerned that it's not going to be able to keep her character beats going as they advance to the next part of the story with later episodes. So it's still time to course correct, still time to fix it, but it is not a promising start for her, I will admit. Now, like an Oreo cookie, I want to end this on a positive note. I love this show. I don't want to end on a downer. There's a lot of little details and tweaks throughout this, like I said, whether it's an addition of a little bit new dialogue or something like that. But for this review, I mainly want to focus on the changes that are pretty significant. And so I'm going to end this. I talked about the stuff, that I didn't like with Con and especially V, but there are changes in here focused around En and Uzi that I actually think are really good and in some ways improvements over what was shown in the show. The first of which being with En. So, of course, just like in the pilot, after En's squad returns to him and Uzi runs off, En has his memories rebooted and he realizes he was talking to a worker drone. He realizes he's screwed up and he goes off, to kill. In the show, Uzi gets there and she's desperately trying to close the door, and En manages to jam his hands into the doors and stop it and then force it open and glitch all the doors out. The comic version of this, Uzi gets there oh my gosh, Dad, I'm so sorry, I screwed up, we need to do something before everyone dies, but En is already there. And I think that the reason this works so well is the visual of it. Uzi gets there and En has killed pretty much all of Khan's door friends, except for the last one, who is just in case you didn't know my name, and then he just gets cut in half. He's killed all of them. And it's just carnage and destruction and worker corpses strewn about the room, and that is what Uzi is greeted with when she arrives at the bunker. I think that is honestly a better way to do it. I think the show tried to do something like this, where once her railgun finished recharging, which the recharge isn't even in the comic, come to think of it, but when her railgun recharges, she turns around and gets ready, and she realizes, seeing all the corpses and the oil and stuff, oh my gosh, everyone is dead. And I think that was what the show was trying to do there, but I think the comic actually does a better job of portraying just how traumatizing and just how horrific this is for Uzi to see, and how it hits harder how this is her fault, that she's the one that led the murder drones back to the bunker with the doors, you know, not secure. I think it does a better job here. Like, I like En getting ahead of her because, of course, she's running on foot. He can fly, so he just flies straight over into the bunker and kills everyone before she gets there. I think this is good. That's a good change. It means that the impact from her failure just affects Uzi more and is definitely more of a factor in her decision to leave. Not just, of course, Khan's betrayal, but the fact that she realizes, I'm a danger to those here, because she doesn't have a lot of friends, but she has Thad, who seems to be like her first crush and kind of a friend to her. So she realizes, I'm a danger and my dad is an idiot. I need to go. This scene does a better job of setting her up on that path of why she feels like she needs to isolate herself, which is what puts her in danger with the solver later. I really like that change. And then the other one, like, even more about Uzi, but like, again, the other said was like En because he got there first, but like really was about Uzi's character. This one's all about Uzi. It's the very, very end of the comic, because at the end of the pilot episode, when Uzi says like, oh, we're going to murder all humans, we're coming for them, her visor glitches a yellow and you see a little bit of the solver, but not much of it. It looks more like an error symbol when it pops by. And I remember when I watched this for the first time, I was thinking like, oh, is she turning into a murder drone? Is that how this works? I mean, kind of. But in the comic, the way they do it, what flashes on her screen is the full solver symbol, clear as day, across her entire visor, like this, not just a little bit on one eye. And it's also purple, like her eyes usually are, instead of yellow. And I think that this is actually a very important distinction from a lore perspective. I mean, it's no secret that there were changes to murder drones after the show was fully greenlit. I mean, Sin was always going to be a part of it in some capacity because her name pops up in text during the pilot, but it's no secret that Liam did tweak the direction that the show was going when he got the full green light to make the rest of the series and the other 7 episodes. So what I think works really well about this is that in the show, when a solver user, one of the worker drones, gets yellow eyes, usually it's more of a sign of possession. We see it with both Nori and with Uzi in the series. But possession and solver usage don't necessarily go hand in hand either. Dahl never gets possessed by Sin. We never see Yeva possessed by Sin. And Nori, gets patched out so that she cannot be possessed by Sin, and she's still using her solver as a heart crab later in the series. So I think that this distinction here, changing the flash on the screen, like, one, making the solver symbol more clear, but 2, showing that it's still purple and not yellow. And like, it does show a bit of her fangs as well, like her solver drone form. I feel like this is a very important distinction for what we know the lore is going to be later in the story. How this is just basically the moment that Uzi's solver is activating, as opposed to something trying to take her over. Because Sin wasn't trying to possess her yet at this point. That doesn't happen until, honestly, episode 6, come to think of it. Because yes, Uzi deals with, like, oil craze in episode 4 and goes crazy, but her eyes never turn yellow during that. They're still purple when she kills her classmates at the camp. It wasn't possession at that point. It was her struggling to control her new form and her new powers. So I think that this change being right there in the adaptation of the pilot story, I think is really good. And honestly, it's the kind of thing that I feel like fans like me were hoping for in this comic, which would be kind of not necessarily streamlining, but stitching together better the plot threads of the show so that the progression feels a bit more natural. Because again, I love this show to death. As you can tell, I have merch up here. I have so many Animinies. I have shirts. I have V on my YouTube play button art back here. I have the Sin statue that I unboxed in my last unboxing video, the big Animega The big Animega Sin right here. I still got this over here next to me. I love this show, but I'm willing to admit the faults that it has, and stuff like this in the comic, I feel like can help correct a lot of those faults and make it a tighter, more cohesive story. So this change at the end is honestly my favorite in the novel because of the fact that it aligns better with the lore that we see in the show. It just, I feel like it's going to overall can flow better installment to installment with little changes like this. So yeah, that's going to do it for this Eve's book club on Murder Drones #1 for the graphic novel. I definitely plan to keep making more of these. Hopefully they'll keep sending me as a Kickstarter backer the links to access the digital versions of these. The part in the back of the novel said like they intended to release #2 in February as well. Clearly that didn't happen. This video is going up March 1st, and I don't have my digital copy of #2 yet, and it's not in stores yet as far as I know. I think they just put #1 in stores. So that's clearly got delayed a little bit. But I would love to keep making videos like this where I get to just talk about this. It's comparisons to the show, what I think's working, what I think isn't working. But I do hope it gets better, like I said, because of my issues with character stuff, specifically character stuff. And let me make this clear right here. I'm not blaming Wyatt for not having Liam be a part of this. The multiple times it has been said in like interviews and stuff leading up to this graphic novel's release that it sounds like Glitch and Oni Press, or maybe just Oni Press, tried reaching out to Liam, but he never responded to them. I mean, he's clearly just hiding in his cave again. Although on a, real world note, I believe I read that he and Katie, his girlfriend, actually got married. So you know what? Good for them. That's a reason not to be talking to anyone on the internet. Enjoy your lives, you two. But I'm still a little concerned about pacing in this. I think that is the main thing other than like V's character, because she's an integral part of it and she's my favorite character. Please don't screw this up. But I think pacing is going to be a problem. And that's an unavoidable problem because, again, it's adapting 8 episodes of a show. But even though they added another graphic novel that is dedicated to episode 5, the whole, memory flashback episode, that's still only 7 issues total. They initially announced this as a 6-issue run, and now they're going to have like a special 7th one put in the middle here. So that has me a little concerned, the fact that this first one that is just the pilot was so fast-paced and crammed together. I feel like that when we get to later, something like episode 7, which is my favorite episode of the series, might have a bit of like pacing issues or things they're going to have to cut, which would be such a shame because I love that episode. The whole gothic horror and the big fight between Uzi and En and the Sinessa reveal and everything. That's such a good episode. And I hope that the pacing doesn't mess with it. And that's probably, again, like I said, my 2 big concerns are characterization of characters like V and the pacing of the series. Because other than that, I really enjoyed this. Again, the art style is gorgeous, and I said this in my unboxing video, Sin is like my favorite villain design ever from anything. It's just so wonderfully creepy, and I've seen so much incredible fan art of her that really emphasized that creepiness. And so I'm so excited to see what she looks like in this comics art style. I think the Sinessa reveal, if they recreate that frame where she turns and goes, "Get snuck upon," it's gonna look really cool, and it's gonna be something I wish I had the full version of to make a wallpaper out of. So I am absolutely looking forward to the rest of it. I hope that they're hearing some of this criticism online. I know that this is something that they storyboard out and plan out well in advance because they plan to release all of these in this year. But since it is an art thing and art can be tweaked in some ways, even if they have to delay some releases, I hope they're listening to the fans' concerns and feedback, and I hope that they can take them to account and take them to heart going to this, because they seem genuinely grateful and impressed at the fandom's, passion for this series and how it destroyed like every single one of the goals that they set for it in the Kickstarter in like a week. if even that. I think it might have done it in like a weekend's time. So I'm hoping that they take it to heart, because it's a not perfect start, but it wasn't horrible, and it definitely has room to grow, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how some of that artwork looks in the future ones. Like I said, Sin in particular, and of course Sparky, our Robo-Raptor, when we get to that. Please remember that V is the third main character. Her sacrifice in episode 6 needs to be a big moment. Please. But anyway, that's going to do it, like I said, for this Eabs Book Club video. I will finally get to the Bendy novels later this month. I promise. I have put it on the calendar. I am already halfway through writing the script. I am actually setting myself proper goals so that it doesn't slip through the cracks again. I really want to talk about those novels. I've been wanting to talk about them since I started making these Eabs Book Club videos, and I'm finally going to do it this month. I promise. I really do promise. And after that, I do have other things planned in addition to the Murder Drone, covering the Murder Drones graphic novels. There are other books from other series and franchises that I love that I want to check out. But of course, the one immediately after Bendy would be it's either going to be next month or month after. I still need to have time to like write the script and everything for that one as well. I haven't even started on it, but I will be doing an Eabs Book Club review on the full Epithet Race book, Prison of Plastic, since I listened to the audiobook preview and then I went into the book. So plenty more book reviews, plenty more Murder Drones videos. You know, for a series that's been gone for a while, it's going to keep living on this channel with like reactions to fan content. I still want to play fan games at some point. I just haven't had time to get to that. But anyway, I will be doing more Murder Drones content, especially on the graphic novel. And I do hope that it can improve to be what we all know that this can be, which is a more connected version of the story that we know and love. But anyway, that's good for this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Please drop a like, comment down below if you did, and if you subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you all on the next one. Bye, guys!